Welcome back. In this installment, we are going to continue adding improvements to the workflow app we created a few episodes ago. That app began as a simple three-step process to generate a quotation for garage door installation. Little by little, we have been adding to it and giving it more capabilities. Now we are going to show how to control the visibility and editability of fields within a form. So what do I mean by visibility? I'm referring to the ability to display a field only on certain steps of a process. For example, suppose a certain field requires information that is not available on step 3. In that case, there is no reason to show it prior to step 3. In fact, showing it earlier might cause confusion because the people doing steps 1 and 2 won't know how to fill it in. That is what we mean by visibility. And we can do the same thing with editability. A field can be configured to be editable only on certain steps, whereas on other steps it can't be changed. Not only does iPhora allow us to control visibility and editability based on step, we can also do so based on workflow role, such as sales rep or sales manager. So now let's see how it's done. Here we are in App Builder, and the app in question has already been unpublished and is ready to be worked on. The first step is to open the form. Most of the fields in this form are filled in by the sales rep on step 1. However, the quotation itself is not uploaded until the last step. And here is where it is uploaded, in the Attachments uploader. However, we would prefer that the final quote have its own uploader, one that is not visible until the last step. And we would like to put that uploader here, near the top of the form. Okay, we have just dragged in a new file uploader. Now let's configure its properties. The widget name will be Final Quote. And the widget label will be Binding Quote. And we'll make sure that this is accessible by other app blocks, and it's capable of uploading multiple files. And we'll make sure that it auto-sizes to the width of the parent container. There, we have configured the uploader. You may have noticed this button named Set Field Access. This controls visibility and editability based on workflow role. Let's see what it looks like. This window lists all the different role names used in this app, including the custom workflow roles such as Sales Rep and Sales Manager. You can use the checkboxes to control whether or not the field is visible or editable to a particular role. Of course, our current need is to control visibility and editability based on step, not role, and that is configured elsewhere. So for now, let's just save the form and exit. Now let's open the workflow process. Here is the latest version of the workflow. Note that in iPhora, steps are synonymous with task nodes. Therefore, the visibility and editability of fields is included in the properties of the task node. For example, here is the first task. It's called Prepare RFQ. Let's look at its properties. Here are the properties. And notice down at the bottom there is a button called Set Field Access. Let's see what it does. The Field Access window appears and lists those fields in the form that were enabled to be accessible by other app blocks. If we want to hide a field on this task or make it non-editable, all we have to do is adjust the check marks. Here is the final quote field that we are looking for. Let's set it so that it is not visible on this task. There. Now that particular field, which is actually an uploader, is not visible on task 1. We are now going to repeat this for the other tasks where this field should also be hidden. There. We have hidden this field on all tasks except the last ones. Note that in this workflow process, there are 2 main branches, which means it actually has 2 last tasks. In this case, we did not hide that field on the last task of this branch, nor on the last task of this branch. Now let's save and build the process, and then republish the app. Okay, here we are in iPhora App Place. We are now logged in as Jill Hill, who is the person who does step 1. Let's create a new request. As you can see, the binding quote uploader is not visible on step 1. Let's fill in this form and submit it. Here is the newly created workflow document. Now let's log in as John Hill in order to do step 2. We are now logged in as John Hill, the sales manager. Here is the newly created workflow document. Let's open it. The workflow is now on step 2, and the binding quote uploader is still not visible. Let's go ahead and complete this step. We have now jumped ahead a little bit. We are logged in as Jack Hill, the installation specialist who does step 3. Let's open the same workflow document and see what it looks like now. And now that we are on step 3, the binding quote uploader is visible. Let's go ahead, attach the quote, and complete the workflow. And just like that, the workflow has been completed and the binding quote has been attached. You now know all there is to know about showing and hiding fields in a form. And if you would like to know more about business process automation and iPhora solutions, just visit iPhora.io.